Hello, welcome back to the Spider's Web, and in this video we're going to carry on with our Dark Souls minis, and we are now concentrating on the Silver Knight Archers. Not Archers, Swordsmen. Silver Knight Swordsmen. Okay, so this is a relatively simple job. However, you do notice sometimes that occasionally you do get to miss some moulding. So if you are bothered about the mould lines, which you should be, depending on what kind of miniatures they are, you're better off taking a couple of seconds to remove it, or remove the majority of it, should I say. So that looks about right for that one. And there's some that you're going to find incredibly difficult to remove. Like here, for instance, it's all up and down the armour plate in there, so you're not going to be able to get that off easily, so don't worry about it. Which I just noticed, no, we don't have any on there, but we do have a little bit of flashing on his antlers. There we go. But on this one we have quite a bit of mould line showing in places where it wasn't showing on the other one. So always try and just have a quick look before you start painting, because as I said, depending on what kind of model it is, you know, it can detract. And with these ones I'm trying to get them as best as I can, because I think they deserve it. They're really nice models, so I'm trying to get as many mould lines and things off these minis as I possibly can. Now I'm also going to just give this a bit of a mix up, because it's not as sticky as it should be. That's better. And now let's have a quick look at this one. Yep, still got the mould lines down here on the leg. We've got some there as well, all the way up in that plating. I can't get that off, so I'm not even going to attempt to. Down there, down that leg. That'll do. Right, so what are we going to do with this one? It's quite simple, really. Silver Knight Swordsmen, so we are going to paint them silver. Except for the cloak, obviously. They are going to be silver. But I don't just paint them silver. No. I always give them a base coat of a darker metallic colour. Usually the base coat that I choose to use is this particular one, which I'm going to show you in a second, because I need to give it a good shake. Warplock Bronze. There are other colours you could use. You could just paint them straight black and then dry brush over with silver, but I prefer doing it this way. So everywhere, I'm going to pop those over to one side for a second, and I'm just going to use this brush because it's going to be a base coat of almost everywhere except for the cape, which I'm just going to do a plain black. In fact, that looks like. Right, I'm going to do this near enough, as I say, everywhere except for the cape. There are places where I don't want to be metal, as in like the trousers, leggings, whatever you want to call them. There. So what I'm going to do with that is I'm just going to paint it as is. Basically, paint it as is, and then I can go over it later on with black, because I just want this black, near enough black and silver all over, because I think that colour scheme looks awesome. I do like black and silver. So don't put too much paint on that you're going to spoil the detail. Make sure it's watered down. I mean, this is on the wet palette. Just add a little more water because it's not quite as watery as I was expecting. And just go over everywhere with this colour. Once it's dried, you can then dry brush with a silver colour. That's all we're doing with these models. Sometimes the very easiest thing to do gives the best effect, which is why on quite a lot of the models I did in the Temple of Elemental Evil set, it was just done with washes, because it gave the better effect than trying to do it with paint. Okay, add some more paint to the brush. There we go. Anywhere that I catch that I don't want black, or or that I want to paint black, or any other colour that you choose to, with this metallic, you can always go over with the colour you want. So don't worry about it, just get the paint on the mini, and then we can look at highlighting and then finishing off. Well, highlighting and repainting certain areas. So there's one done. Next, and this, I'm doing it this way, is going to pick up the detail in that shield really, really well, because it's a dry brush. We're just going to touch over the highlights of that shield. I'm going to make sure that the dry brush we use is a very, very, very dry brush, because you don't want too much paint on the brush when picking out detail like this, because you're just going to leave it looking streaky, and that's the last thing you want. You want to just pick up the highlights or the high points of the mini, and make it all stand out. If you're just going to make it so that it looks streaky, you might as well just not bother. The thing is, like everything else, dry brushing is a technique that takes practice. Because you're always, it seems quite counterintuitive not to have much paint on your brush when you want to cover large areas. And you always seem to think you need more paint on the brush than you actually do. But with dry brushing you want as little paint on the brush as possible. So you've seen me do dry brushing before anyway, and you can see what can go wrong and what can't go wrong. And sometimes, depending on how you're going to do it, if you dry brush it and then give it a wash afterwards, it doesn't look too bad. But we'll see how we go. I don't know whether I'm going to give these a wash or not. It all depends on how they look once the dry brush has gone on. It may look a little bit too bright for what I have in mind, and if so I may give it a very light wash with black. But these decisions can be made much later. They don't need to be made now. You can make a lot of the decisions that you're going to make. I'll have to give this one a bit of a wash up as well. And oh yeah, once again, I'm either knocking it off with me, putting too much pressure on the brush as I'm painting and actually knocking it off, or it's just not sticking properly. But there we are. Just notice the back of the shield on the first one isn't covered properly. Hopefully that's fine now. Looks it. Okay, and next, the final one. And we just, as usual, cover it all. We're not bothered about any details as yet. We're just bothered about getting the paint onto the model. The detailing will come much later. When I say we're not bothered about details, what I mean is we're not bothered about bringing out all the details. We are bothered about the details because the one thing we do not want to do is obscure them by putting too much paint on. So be careful of that when you're doing base coating. And the last thing we want to do is clog up any of the detail, especially when it's fine detail like the detail that's on the sword or the armour with these kind of models. But so we're not worried about, as I said, picking out the detail on these. You can tell because I'm using a brush like that to apply the paint. If I was bothered, I'd use a more detailed brush, a finer brush with a proper point on it, whereas this one is just the brush that I actually use just to, really, I use this one now just to transfer paint from the pot onto my wet palette. I don't really use it for anything else. So we're not looking for overly careful, over carefulness, pedanticness when it comes down to applying the paint in this way. We just want the paint on the model. Once the paint is on and dried, then is the time that we look at being careful. But even then, we're not trying to be overly careful with this because we're applying dry brushes with to finish this off. So we're not picking out every little piece of detail by a very narrow brush. So, but quite often when we're painting minis, we are trying to pick out detail with the brush. In this case we aren't, is what I'm trying to say. So if you're painting along, just slap the paint on. Just make sure that you're not plugging up any of the detail. Make sure it's spread out, make sure it's watered down a little bit. Not much, doesn't need much, but it does need to be thinned down enough to spread properly. And I think that is it for those. So I will rinse this brush out, and then we can have a look at how they've dried, if they've dried okay. That's the first one. Doesn't look too bad. Oops, I've just noticed now that I've missed one of the more obvious parts of the model, the front of his face. Oh, can I say? I miss something every time I do it in these. Oh well. So, right, so he's done. Now, so we're not doing the cape. We don't really need to. Okay, we have accidentally got paint on, but I'm not fussed about that. Looking better already, aren't they? We just adjust. That's better. They are looking much, much better already. So we'll just rinse our brush out. I don't know whether I did that beforehand, but I'm doing it again, just in case. And we're going into Abaddon Black. And that's going on the palette. And as you can imagine, that will be on the cape and the leggings, and if we could see any other soft areas of material, then we'll put it on that as well. So we have to look now at what we have. I'll just wet the brush a little bit. I've changed brushes now, as you can see, because I'm doing more detailed and careful work on this, so I don't want to run the risk of getting the paint where I don't want it, which I wasn't really bothered about at first. And just applying it to the cape. And don't forget the cape is shown here as well. There's a little bit of that Warclock bronze that's not quite dried properly there. Never mind. We'll just keep applying until we have a smooth bristle. Oh yeah. Keep applying until we've got a smooth coverage and the cape is looking completely black with no trace of the Warclock bronze coming through. And we also want to do the leggings back here. So you can do these any colour you wish, you don't have to do black. If you're painting these minis, you're painting them to your taste, not somebody else's. So remember that as you're painting, because it is very important. You have to like your finished product, and if you don't like the colour scheme because you're following somebody else's, then that's going to take away the enjoyment for you. So if I do black and you want to do green, do green. If I do pink and you want to do blue, then do blue. Now do it the way you want to do it. I'm going back into the Warplock bronze because I have missed the inside leg here. Oh yeah, wash that out. Now they do say as well not to mix water, not to mix metallic water or metallic paint and normal paint as you're cleaning your brushes. Use separate water pots. The water pot I have is quite big, so it's going to be diluted quite a lot, so I'm not worried about that. But if you've only got a small water pot, then get two, one for metallic paint, one for normal paints, because the metallic paints, the whatchamacallit, the pieces of the metallic pieces that make it metallic looking does come off and float around in the water. But as I said, I've got a really big pot. It's actually the lid off a 100 disc cake box for a set of CDs. So it is a fairly big pot, so it is going to get... Oh, so sorry, what I'm going to say is I haven't had any issue with the glittery parts of the metallic paint coming through in normal paints, but you can do if you're not careful, so bear that in mind. So that's one done, and we'll just keep moving it down along the length of the cape. And there we are. And that's for the cape. Now it's just the leggings here that need doing. This pot could always go in the middle there, but nobody's going to see that anyway, so it's not vitally important that that is done. There we are. Anywhere else, I think I can get it now. I have missed one part of it. I'm going to turn the lamp on for a second so I can try and see a little better. There we go. I'm going back to the first one again to try and, or to, not correct, but to make the adjustment that I missed when I did it originally. that adjustment is on these areas. I'm going to have to come back and do this parts again because I am dry brushing, don't forget, so the silver is going to go on them. I'm not too bothered at the moment because I will be highlighting as well, so once I've done the, I'll turn that off again now, once I've done the highlight or the dry brush, I can see where I need to put the highlights, so it's all good. So, just finish it off. With the black on this one. These are going to be quite quick to paint. That's a bit, mainly because I'm not planning on a wash for these. I'm planning on quite literally just getting them painted, and that's it, they're finished. So there's not going to be any faffing around with washes. Now, depending on how long the video is, it may get split into two, I don't know. But like I said, if there is going to be a wash, it's going to be right at the very end. It's not going to be one where I normally do. I'll do the base coat, then do the wash, and then do all the highlighting stages. There we are. So that's those done. Next job. As I said, it's highlighting. It's a very simple, very simple technique. Stormhost Silver is the one we're going for. It's a nice bright silver colour. We'll give it a shake. We get some on our dry brush. As I say, we want as little paint on the brush as possible. I'm going to push these over there, bring the paint forward a little bit.